The courtroom lights flickered against the pale walls as the maid stood trembling, her hands clenched so tightly the knuckles had turned white. The millionaire's lawyers pointed at her like she was a criminal, their polished shoes and sharper tongues ready to crush her. The judge's gavel waited in a cold silence. And just as her last hope seemed to collapse like a dying flame, a single dad veteran, quiet, unnoticed, dismissed as a nobody, rose from the back row and cleared his throat. He carried no suit, no briefcase, and no power. But he carried something far greater, the truth. And the moment he stepped forward, everything in that courtroom shifted. If you believe in kindness, justice, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps stories like this travel farther. Her name was Marisol, a young immigrant maid who had spent years cleaning the giant marble halls of the wealthy Rothmore estate. She had always been quiet, respectful, and hard-working. Every morning before sunrise, her bus arrived in the rich part of town where her faded uniform always looked painfully out of place among the rows of polished black cars. But she walked with dignity, because she knew her job wasn't just work, it was how she fed her siblings, how she survived, how she built a life piece by piece. The millionaire, Charles Rothmore, barely noticed her beyond an occasional nod. His house was full of cameras, guards, and people who bowed when he passed. So when his expensive watch went missing, it was almost predictable who he blamed first. The accusation came like a storm. Security surrounded her, the house manager spoke down to her, and Charles himself declared that trust had been broken. Marisol tried to explain she had never gone near the drawer where the watch was kept, but no one listened. They searched her bag, her locker, even her tiny apartment. She had nothing but tears and the crushing weight of being poor, powerless, and easy to blame. The media grabbed the story quickly, millionaire betrayed by maid. Comment sections buzzed with judgment. Her employer filed charges. And with no money for a lawyer, she walked into court alone, wearing the same uniform she always wore, the only one she had. She felt like a child lost in a dangerous forest as she sat at the defense table. The millionaire's legal team towered behind their polished binders, smiling with the confidence of people who expected to win. But Marisol had something they didn't, her truth. Still, truth without a voice is just silence, and she knew her silence could destroy her life. Every word spoken against her chipped away at her spirit. The wealthy attorneys painted her as deceptive, desperate, someone who would steal out of greed or need. She kept shaking her head, whispering that she didn't do it, but her voice was swallowed by their volume. At the back of the courtroom sat Noah Reeves, a single dad veteran who had shown up for jury duty earlier that week. He had a quiet presence, the kind of man who looked like life had carved both strength and sadness into him. His posture was straight, his eyes observant, and he kept a notebook filled with tiny sketches and scribbled calculations. No one knew he had an IQ high enough to stun the military psychologists. They didn't know he'd spent years decrypting battlefield communications or that trauma had pushed him into a simple life repairing appliances by day and raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, by night. People saw him as just another tired dad in a faded jacket. But Noah had a gift, he saw patterns where others saw coincidence. While waiting for his own case assignment that morning, he noticed something unusual in the evidence photos displayed on the big screen. It was subtle, almost invisible, a reflection, a misplaced shadow, a timestamp that didn't match what the lawyers claimed. He quietly asked for permission to remain in the courtroom, saying he wanted to observe. The judge allowed it. And as the case unfolded, piece by piece, Noah realized that the maid wasn't just innocent, she was being framed. When the millionaire's head of security spoke confidently about the footage, Noah's mind replayed the angles like a movie reel. He saw the reflection of a door closing behind someone unseen. He noticed the watch wasn't even in its usual drawer in earlier footage. He saw a brief shadow of a man in a tailored suit slip past the camera minutes before the watch vanished. And he immediately understood the setup, someone close to Rothmore wanted the maid gone. Someone with access. Someone with a motive. Marisol stood alone as the accusations piled up. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about her little brother back home who believed she was brave. She thought about her mother who prayed for her. She thought about how fragile life becomes when reputation shatters. She felt herself breaking, and when the millionaire's lawyer demanded the maximum charge, her knees nearly gave out. Then Noah stood. He didn't ask for permission. He simply walked forward with the calm confidence of a man who had faced death and refused to bow to fear. The judge looked up, startled. The lawyers frowned. Rothmore raised an eyebrow, annoyed that a stranger dared interrupt. But Noah's voice was steady as he asked the court if he could speak. He said he had information that directly affected the legitimacy of the charges. The millionaire's team objected immediately, trying to shut him down, but the judge allowed him a brief opportunity. Noah approached the evidence screen like a professor preparing to teach. His fingers traced the edges of the photos, pointing out angles and reflections none of the lawyers had noticed. He explained how timestamps worked in digital surveillance, how shadows revealed movement, how the supposed clear footage was actually incomplete. He spoke calmly, but every sentence landed like a hammer. When he revealed the reflection in the polished drawer, a reflection showing the millionaire's own nephew sneaking into the room, gasps filled the courtroom. The millionaire's lawyers scrambled. They claimed the photo was misleading, but Noah countered every attempt with facts, logic, and irrefutable observations. The judge leaned forward, riveted. Marisol stared at Noah with tears welling in her eyes, not from fear this time, but from the shock of finally being seen, believed, defended. The courtroom turned from hostile to stunned silence as Noah revealed everything he had deduced. If he hadn't been there, the truth might have died beneath wealth and influence. But he was there. And he wouldn't stay silent while an innocent woman was destroyed. The judge called for a recess to review the new evidence. By the time he returned, he dismissed all charges against Marisol. Her legs buckled as the weight of terror finally lifted. She collapsed into her chair, covering her face as sobs of relief shook her body. The millionaire's face darkened as his nephew was questioned, and the truth spilled out. He had stolen the watch to pay off gambling debts, and he blamed Marisol because he thought no one would care. But someone did. Noah gathered his notebook quietly, preparing to leave without expecting anything in return. He didn't seek praise. He didn't